Hello, Alexis.
Hello, Dr. Rachel. You are looking particularly sophisticated this evening.
Oh, okay. I think it's my $5 op shop jacket.
Well, you are making that $5 work for you.
I do love a good op shop purchase.
How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I just got off a video session with my colleagues at North Brisbane Psychologists, but we were online, and which is why we're doing our live stream today at 6 p.m. and not 5 p.m. So thank you to everybody who is joining us an hour later than normal.
Yes, always stoked to have you with us. Please, as we're talking, feel free to leave your comments and questions because we'll start moderating at about the 20-minute mark. And we love hearing from you because you're the reason that we do this. You are our muses, so please connect with us so that we can connect with you.
Yeah.
We are going a little bit off piste tonight
Yes.
because this is our first soiree into depth psychology. And it's one of the areas...
It is and it isn't.
Okay, go on. I love it when you correct me, please.
Oh, I love it when you tell me I'm wrong, darling.
I do.
Well, I mean, I think we've talked about topics that touch on unconscious mental processes before. Mm-hmm. And I do like I like to say it as unconscious mental processes rather than the unconscious, because the unconscious makes it sound like one thing. I think it's a bit more scientific to talk about unconscious processes, you know, like, because even our digestion is an unconscious process. So it just acknowledges that there's a whole lot going on outside of our awareness. And of course, when you try to talk about psychological unconscious processes, you have to start bringing in concepts, metaphors, esoteric language, which is what we're going to be doing today, isn't it, Alexis?
Well, I'm really glad that you raised that, Rachel, because the unconscious is always present in all of our conversations. I'm really pleased that you made the connection to our bodies, because the body is a manifestation of our unconscious. So yes, we are taking a journey into the unconscious today, into our unconscious processes, as Rachel says.
And we're going to do things a bit differently. Today, Alexis is going to do more talking, and I've got a bunch of questions for you, Alexis.
Exciting. Thank you. I love questions. So tonight we're talking about the anima and the animus. And I have found through my own exploration that whenever I'm talking about the anima, which is our inner feminine, I tend to use my left side. And whenever I'm talking about the animus, which is our inner masculine, I tend to use my right hand, now on my right side. Now, I am right side dominant. For those of you who are reverse, that may switch. But it would be interesting as you're listening tonight and as you hopefully go and share what you've learned with your family, that you might want to pay attention to how these things show up in your body, because quite often the body reveals these unconscious experiences that we might not necessarily know at this more cognitive level. Is that fair to say, Rachel?
Yeah, I often say to my clients, if this office was your mind, then that tissue box over there is your conscious mind. That's how little we can, you know, shine the light of consciousness only on a small amount of our inner experience at any one time. And that's totally okay. That's the point of being a conscious self, is we have a spotlight of attention or awareness, and it needs to go on the problem at hand. You know, we cannot focus on all things all at once. That's not the nature of attention. However, we can get better at bringing our attention to different parts of our experience through, you know, having the words to think about things, for example. Yeah.
So language helps us bring the unconscious into the conscious. Is that what you're saying?
Language helps us take things. Yeah. So even on our call just now with the other psychologists, we did a little exercise on values clashes and resolving values clashes. It was a new model to me from Thomas Gordon, and I thought, I kind of knew this intuitively, the high risk and the low risk solutions to values clashes. But the model, like any good framework, suddenly gave me a conscious awareness of something that had been just sitting somewhere in me as an intuitive unconscious knowing. So yeah, language makes things conscious, and you're going to talk about anima and animus today, which again, I think we have a sense of it when we interact with men. When we interact with women, perhaps we feel a different kind of energy, and maybe we feel these different energies inside of ourselves, the inner feminine side and the inner masculine side, the inner sort of soulful side, the more rational, courageous side of us. But if we don't have words to kind of talk about, and this is only one way to talk about it, but I think it's an exciting way to talk about it.
Agreed. Yeah. So chances are you will have sensed some of it in your life, and now you'll have more language to draw from. So I thought we could start by describing a little bit about what an archetype is, and then explore the masculine, and then explore the feminine. And I'd love to close with a really brief exercise that I've used for marrying the inner masculine and feminine, which from my experience has been really a very powerful healing process. Carl Jung talks about individuation, and his process describes firstly doing shadow work, which we have referred to in our earlier videos, and then secondly to do this anima and anima marrying. And this very much aligns with my background in yoga, which means union, and also my experience with naturopathy, which comes from wholeness. Healing means wholeness. So there's a lot of tradition behind this marrying our inner masculine and feminine. So it's about recognizing these sides of ourselves and learning to dance between the two, so that we can really self-regulate, as opposed to spending too much time in one at the expense of the other, which will undoubtedly manifest in our relationships and across the board. So I'd love to hear actually your definition, or your description of archetype, Rachel. Do you have a sense of archetype?
I mean, it's a great question, and I have myself in the past year or two getting into this depth psychology stuff, kind of gone, what is an archetype? And I guess we use archetypes often and we don't know it. So, people will say to me things like, oh, that former boss of mine, he was a bit of a bully. Now, as soon as somebody says a bully, I have an archetype in my mind of a bully, a show off. So in modern days, we have these sort of ways of, like everybody knows kind of what you mean when you say a show off, a bully. We have, and there's stereotypes as well, a slut, like there's words in English, they're labels, they're stereotypes, but as soon as we say it, it's like a shorthand. Now, in Jungian psychology, an archetype, there are traditional archetypes, like the hero, we all know epic stories like the Star Wars trilogy, where Luke Skywalker is the hero, or Atreyu in the Never-Ending Story, or Sigourney Weaver in Alien. They're the heroes. They're sort of under-resourced at the beginning, but they get stronger and they don't know where they're going, but they keep going anyway. And that's a classic archetype. And we do have an archetype of a mother, the mother, and the father, so we have and there's dark side and a light side. So there's the good mother and the bad mother, and the good father and the bad father. And then we have archetypes of men and women, the nurturing person, in the woman, the aggressive, angry, banshee side of women, it's very stereotyping and huge overgeneralizations, and yet worth looking into, I think, from a psychological point of view. And then for men, we think of them as logical and courageous and brave, and yet, the downside might be aggressive, violent, and so I think it's worth pointing out that archetypes have a light and a shadow side as well. But I'd also love to ask you what you think an archetype is, or whether that resonates with your understanding.
Yes, it is getting steamy in here. I would have to agree that they show up in stories that we all agree to, like fairy tales or even classic movies. And they are, from my understanding, symbols or characters that we all agree upon. So they're described by Robin Robertson, he's a Jungian mathematician, as cognitive invariance, so that we all cognitively agree. It's like this unspoken agreement. Yes, the king, has power. He's very logical, rational. He speaks on behalf of everybody. He has a certain level of power, and he represents, as you described, the father or the masculine. And the masculine, we all agree, has certain qualities around problem-solving abilities, and the intellect is very solid, externally focused, firm, qualities around assertion and even providing. They're all masculine qualities, and I think we can all, we all agree on it. That's the definition of an archetype. There's no cognitive variation. We all agree that's what a masculine is.
It covers, all psyches. It's an archetype. It's an overarching understanding. Yeah. Okay. How does this relate, Alexis, to the topic that we're talking about today of anima and animus, the inner feminine side, the inner masculine side?
Well, we all have these both masculine and feminine within us. And I've certainly found there are issues that come about, including physical or mental or emotional difficulties or challenges that come about when there is a lack of integration. So I was thinking through a few clients in preparation for this, and I've certainly worked with a lot of clients, seem to attract them, probably because I resonate quite strongly with the nurturing mother type archetype. I've really drawn in a lot of excess masculine qualities. So I've worked a lot with those who find it difficult to channel their discipline outside of rigidity or self-sacrificing schema. And I have personally resolved or found some level of integration between that side of myself. I started out my naturopathic career being very rigid with myself, to the point that I stopped menstruating, was unwell, just too forceful in my mind. So I think that's why I attract these types who need to learn to bring in some of that self-kindness, self-compassion, those softer qualities about really genuinely caring for themselves, to allow themselves to match this intensity with even resting, even downtime, even creativity or spaciousness. These would all be feminine qualities. So that's one way I've seen it show up. I worked in corporate law, not as a lawyer, but as a corporate wellness practitioner in my early career. And there I saw a lot of this kind of mentality and just excess competition within the culture. And, when I started there, I was employed because the suicide rates were extremely high. And thankfully, we managed to bring it down. But it was through a lot of cultural change around seeking support, being willing to reach out, acknowledging vulnerability. I mean, that's been a huge shift even in our career time. And this is one way that it shows up. Certainly excess masculine qualities is something that I've seen quite a lot in this space. Yeah. How about you, Rachel?
I haven't really carved up the world very much in terms of masculinity and femininity, but I'm always open. I was looking at the Wikipedia page on Anima and Animus in preparation, and it said something here which really struck me as interesting, because it talks about the unconscious feminine psychological qualities that a man possesses and the unconscious masculine qualities a woman possesses. And then it says something here that Jung believed a male sensitivity is often repressed and therefore considered the anima one of the most significant autonomous complexes. So it gets its own complex. It kind of gets tricky in the unconscious mind when a man represses his more sensitive side. But that the anima and animus manifests through dreams, as well as influences a person's attitudes and interactions with the opposite sex.
Mm-hmm.
A natural understanding of another member of the opposite sex is instilled in individuals that stem from constant subjection to members of the opposite sex. So it goes on that we develop an inner feminine and an inner masculine just by virtue of the fact that from a young age, we interact with males and females.
Mm-hmm.
And we are constantly sort of internalizing, you know, what does it mean to be me? How am I like this person? How am I not like this person? You know, and the other thing that it made me think of reading the Wikipedia page was, what's it like to interact with a woman versus a man? And can I say anything at all without being sexist, stereotyping, or overgeneralizing? Can I say anything at all that's true about what it's like to interact with a man versus what it's like to interact with a woman? And I found it really hard to put that into words, because I've always been taught that personality trumps gender, that actually, you know, when we look across the population, personality traits explain more variance in many behavioral outcomes over gender. However, I have a sense of, yes, it feels a bit different to interact with a man and a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just tell you one more piece. It made me think of a colleague of mine. I used to work with, a clinical psychologist who was gay many years ago. There's no children watching, so I can tell this story. And even though he was gay and his sexuality was much more towards other men, he said to me, I can't explain it, Rachel. We'd had a couple of glasses of wine. It was a Friday afternoon. He said, even though I'm a gay man, I still really like breasts. And I laughed at him. But I also remember this from about 15 years ago, because I was really surprised that this gay man admitted this to me at Friday afternoon drinks. And I'm like, he's not flirting with me because he's gay. He just wanted to tell me this piece of his psyche, which I found really interesting. And I think relates to this thing of, there's something in the masculine and there's something in the feminine that we can find attractive no matter what our biological sex or sexuality is. I've just rambled, but that's what came up for me in this topic.
Well, it's a very memorable story, Rachel. Look, of course. Even if I was attracted to, I mean, I can appreciate women. I mean, if we're going to go there, right? There is, there's got to be.
This live stream is going downhill.
We did say we were going off piece today. What are we getting at here? We're getting at the fact that clearly there is more to individuals than personality. There is something inherent in what it is to be a woman, what it is to be a man. We all have masculine and feminine qualities within us, and the way that we relate to those parts of ourselves will influence how we feel within our own experience and how we relate to others of the same sex and others of the opposite sex.
Yeah,
I think it's probably one really to experiment with, you know, and we've raised this consciousness today around these inequalities. And it's obviously a huge topic globally, for the fact that there is increasing awareness that we need for balance, you know, particularly the state of the world today. We need women in powerful positions. We need women in leadership positions, not just to tick the box of gender equity, but actually because we need collaboration, we need empathy, we need compassion, we need vulnerability. And the only way we're actually going to create harmony within the individual, within countries, is for us to bring about both qualities of compassion and assertion. I mean, they're just two, but, you know, and you think about the really wonderful leaders In fact, I jotted down some of the archetypes. You know, Barack Obama, he represents the gentleman, you know, the logic, the political rationale, you know, and then there's Gandhi and Mandela, more of the kind of human spirit, spiritual leaders, and then the Buddha. And then we think of, you know, powerful women, Marilyn Monroe, you mentioned the sexual diva, the woman who's, you know, managed to use her sexuality as a prowess. Eleanor Roosevelt, she was powerful too, I see, the nurturer, you know, but even these examples, they all demonstrate a balance of being able to assert themselves, to be able to actualize in the external world and be compassionate and understanding and empathetic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to what you were saying before, Alexis. You mentioned that early in your adult life and career, you had a lot of, it sounded like, tell me if I'm wrong, a lot of these masculine qualities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of being sort of competitive and kind of rigid in your thinking, you know, these traditional masculine qualities.
Yeah.
And any time we're kind of hyper feminine or hyper masculine, we're going into, we need to look at the shadow, right? Because with Anima and Animus, you know, we perhaps have a shadow that we haven't looked into. So around midlife, they say that we swap over. Now, this is not true for everybody, but Jung said we swap over and men become more feminine in the traditional sense, women become more masculine in the traditional sense. This could be a drop in estrogen and testosterone around midlife. And there's another way of looking at it, and that is that, you know, the qualities, but as you say, a young woman might have this feistiness, this competitiveness, this hyperlogical, rational approach in the world as well, which means you hadn't developed your nurturing side. And like a lot of men who are out in the world being competitive and hyperlogical, what's still in their shadow is they're more vulnerable, softer, more ethereal, more nurturing sort of side. So I think in terms of something practical for people listening, it's sort of like, what's still in your shadow? Have you developed your traditional feminine qualities to the extent that you'd like, or the masculine qualities to the extent you'd like? And what about the other side? Is there room for you to call that out of the shadows and work on that? Because you're saying, I think, aren't you, that you did and you still are doing this work?
Yeah, very much. I'm even reflecting on the conversation, the examples I've given. I think that I've run through a lot more of the masculine side, not so much the feminine. And I think it's definitely a collective conversation to be had.
And some personal work as well. I wonder, what have you been doing to integrate your Anima and Animus? Can you share any kind of more practical ways that you've been doing that?
Thank you. It's a really beautiful question. Look, I think the first thing that comes to mind is really honouring and validating my needs, which, as you know, Rachel, has been a huge transformation for me, because I do long for a lot of feminine qualities like connection and closeness and affection. And I think I had always placed them secondary to other qualities that I had been raised to think of as more important. So validating my needs has been a huge part of acknowledging that, you know, connection is so integral. It's like breath for me. So that's been an ongoing journey. And even studying public health, I think, was quite a huge shift for me. I actually studied public health thinking that I would go into medicine, which I think is quite a, you know, again, if we're going to get archetypal, medicine is a very masculinized institution, whereas public health it's collective. It's all about equity. I mean, these are very feminine qualities: inclusion, genuine appreciation of diversity. So I think, again, getting validating that with language and seeing that I wasn't wrong for wanting to include people in access to my services, for example. I wasn't wrong for wanting to stop and understand why someone was living rough on the streets. I wasn't wrong for that. So I think probably just validation is really what has done it for me, and language around the feminine qualities. And I'm still seeking leaders, feminine leaders. I mean, Brené Brown and Esther Perel, they're probably second to you, Rachel. No, I mean that, but I had to say it. It's true. I think we do need more feminine leaders.
And I would like to add to that, men who are doing their work. I really value men who are doing their inner work, and organizations. Glenn has mentioned here that where he works, empathy is a driving force. There's even NVC books on the recommended reading list for staff. Empathy is a source of positive organizational change, is growing as a way of mutual success for both the customers and organization. So that's really heartening to hear that that's happening in your organization, Glenn, and more organizations I'm working with are understanding the need for the soft skills and for empathy, and to be able to have brave and robust conversations. We need to feel safe enough to be vulnerable. And I do think there is a change happening. Mia says, working in industries that are seen as masculine has had a detrimental effect on me. Being told I was too emotional, too sensitive, too soft. If I raised an issue when coaching staff, this caused me early in my career to shut down the feminine side. Yeah, I think this is quite common for women in certain industries. Even interacting with other women, there was barely any softness. We had hard exteriors and competed with each other. I capped out 12 months ago and switched careers, which has allowed me to embrace the more soft, nurturing, gentle, feminine side a lot more. So sounds like a good choice, Mia. And yeah,
we really need to be honouring those organisations who are doing it, without obviously speaking out of school, Glenn. But if you'd like to mention where you work, and likewise, Mia, if I think it's worth celebrating organisations who really are embracing empathy, not just as a rhetoric, but as a cultural shift.
Yeah. My husband got quite triggered by this topic, I have to tell you, when I talked about,
go on. What happened?
So great. Like, psychologists just love it when people get triggered, because
conflict material.
It's like, tell me why. And he said, because, I think it's that, when we suggest that men can't be nurturing and gentle, and that the masculine equals not nurturing, not gentle. And I wanted to point out, and I've checked again on the Wikipedia page, the Anima and Animus, that Jung and the other depth psychologists never said this is they never talked about men and women. They talked about the Anima and the Animus. So, and in fact, Anima is defined as soul or breath, and the Animus, or the vital life spirit or force, and Animus is the mental powers, the mind, desire and courage. So we might associate Animus with ego and Anima with soul. I mean, that's a very blunt way of saying it. But even if we think of it as soul and ego, the ego being more about the mind and logic and, protecting and defending and being courageous and chasing our goals and desires, and the soul being that which is not ego, that comes up in our dreams, or, comes through as intuition or something, then of course each of us have both of those. And yet, to go to something that Stephanie said, having a stronger masculine side, can this be why it's hard to, I think she meant to love oneself first, or connect with oneself. We live in a culture which values this animus energy, the ego, the logic, the competition, the individualism. We very much live in a culture like that nowadays, which has forgotten a lot of the more esoteric, spiritual ways of life. And so even women, as you pointed out, Alexis, and as Stephanie has pointed out, and as I've experienced, and so many women, think of Margaret Thatcher, for goodness sake, like we feel also that we need to be very logical and very kind of hard-nosed and competitive. And as Mia said, harden up and shut down our softness in order to get somewhere in life. So this is not a man-woman thing. Plenty of men have plenty of capacity to be nurturing and loving. What do you think, Alexis?
Absolutely. It's not a debate between men and women by any means. It's about finding strengths of both and marrying both sides of ourselves for being able to regulate. There's a time to be assertive, and if I'm not comfortable in that masculine side, I'm going to miss opportunities. I'm going to miss those moments when something comes along and I just, if I don't go for it, then I'm going to be compromised. Similarly, if I'm too masculine, I spoke about some of those issues, but being too feminine equally has its own issues. It's certainly about integration within ourselves.
And individuation, which goes with integration, individuation is defined as becoming more and more and more yourself, less and less defined by what other people tell you are, but what you know yourself to be. And that involves this integration of all parts of you, that you can be vulnerable and strong, that you can be very driven and sometimes very sad, or whatever the binaries might seem to be, but they're in all of us.
Absolutely. I just wanted to share a few examples in clients in case it's helpful for our listeners, and then finish with a very, very short exercise that we can all do for integration. But I've mentioned a few examples around excess masculine. I can think also of a director client who found it very hard to accept influence from his female partner, and that then led to relationship issues and the flow and effect from that. So the need for control would be a sign of an excess masculine. And then some of the signs of an excess anima quality or excess feminine would be those who are very, I'm thinking of a male client who is very in touch with his emotions, but unable to tap assertion to the point that it's interfering with his ability to provide for his family, to take his position in the world. And, it's perplexing. It's perplexing for someone when this is the case, because they're like, well, I'm so in touch with my feelings. What's happening here? Why am I not attractive to the opposite sex, for example? So there's an example of how it does play out in that male-female dynamic.
And we want to each, I love your idea of marrying the other part of yourself. Makes me remember the idea of the inner companion. And it's funny because my inner companion, which I see as my true self or my soul or the observing self, I don't know what to call it, I have a sense of that part of me as being male. But if I had to, I would refer to my inner companion as having a bit more of that masculine energy, probably because I'm a woman. Sometimes she comes up as the wise woman, the white witch or something, but I like this notion about inner companion. And it's like, let's just get together, let's marry that person. Because it's very easy to feel so lonely, trapped in one's ego, in one's mind and in one's thinking and just in one's goals. If we don't have a deeper sense of self, we can get out of balance, we can get lonely.
That is very interesting that you mentioned that, because having done some work with my inner Animus, which has been literally a visualization where I go to meet my inner masculine, and then we have a little dynamic. Last time we sat in the spa together and just had a conversation. But since doing this work, I have felt I've got an inner companion. And as a single parent, I found myself saying things like, yeah, we nailed that. Like I'm kind of tapping my inner mum and my inner dad in being able to discipline and nurture my children, for example. So I think it does really treat loneliness, this experience of marrying ourselves, you know, and rather than seeking needs externally, you know, I heard a lot today at our, well, after our practice group, people saying they showed up because they need touch. You know, I mean, that would be just something that could be very easily treated through an inner marrying of our inner selves rather than seeking from outside. I have personally found since doing this work that I feel I can meet my own needs more readily. For connection, for love, for touch, all of it.
And what that's making me think of is a distinction I sometimes make for my clients, if I think they're ready for it, between seeking. The mind and the ego seeks, and of course it does, like we wouldn't get through life if we didn't seek our goals and seek to get our needs met. But the mind is in such seeking mode that we can get very snagged there and thinking that things should be different, we should be different, other people should be behaving differently to what they are. And the other companion to seeking is longing, is just sitting with our longings, because longing is a quality of the heart, not the ego mind. You know, if I long for touch, my first preference might be to get it from somebody else. But I would like to be able to sit with that longing as a beautiful need, an inherently positive need. You know, maybe for a moment, because there's no one there, I can do the self-hug, which is something I teach my clients to do. And in fact, it's something I've seen executives do in meetings when they're very stressed. I've seen them unconsciously give them, they start rubbing the back of their head, they start giving themselves a little bit of touch, because they clearly need some soothing. You know, they're getting a bit heated, and we actually respond to our own needs quite unconsciously sometimes. And the trick is becoming conscious of them, and then we can respond to them consciously. And sometimes sitting with the longing, yeah, that's there's a sadness in that, because our first preference might be to seek it outside of ourselves and to experience it from someone else or a situation. And great, if you can, awesome. And if you can't, sit with the longing. And that inner companion can do this for you. And this is, I think, a fairly feminine quality, because it's going inward rather than going out into the world. Does that make sense?
It does.
Blah, blah, blah.
Providing for ourselves, that is a feminine quality, I would agree. Although it's probably both. An element of provision. So we're giving and receiving. To give is masculine, to receive is feminine. And what I like about what you've demonstrated is, and in fact, you've just given a beautiful example of what I was going to recommend, which is this crossing of the midline. You know, we know that at the neurological level, we have these fibers quite thick, known as the corpus callosum. They integrate the left and right sides of the brain, which represent the masculine and feminine. So anytime we cross there, we have an embodied experience, as well as a mental. There'll be a flow on mental and neurological experience of integrating both sides of ourselves. And as you were talking about that kind of self-soothing, I was thinking about a conversation I had recently where, you know, there was this, this corporate developer was, you know, stroking, and it was a deliberate kind of, it was a crossing the midline. So I think we do it unconsciously, and if we were more conscious, then perhaps we would give it to ourselves more freely. That's got to be a good thing.
Yes. And one more question for you, Alexa. Stephanie wants to know, if I feel like my masculine side is stronger, how can I equal out the two? How can a woman or a man cultivate their more feminine side?
Great question. I would have to say that the simplest, most accessible way to do that would be embodiment. Interoception is a feminine quality. And more we're hearing about interoception in the sphere of psychology. And it obviously comes strongly from a yogic perspective. well, you would get a good dose in a yoga class, for example. So just through being in touch with your body, you are meeting your need for nurturing and for connection, and more likely to be responsive to your needs, which are all feminine qualities. So at a very simple level, meditation equally would be considered a predominantly feminine quality. And these would be really simple things you can do, as well as, you know, what we spoke about, crossing the midline. I quite like doing this with my hands. Anything that is a combination of touch and crossing over will offer some integration. Do you have any other additions to that, Rachel?
Oh, I mean, I think I like to ask people in workshops to think of somebody who embodies the qualities that they are aiming for. So if you're interested in finding more balance with, you know, masculine, feminine side, and you're a woman, think of a woman in your life who you know, or even someone you don't know, but who's a character from, you know, something that you really love. And really contemplate, what does that person do? How do they hold themselves? How do they embody this more balanced masculine feminine side? You know, and even just doing a reflection on somebody else. When I teach emotional intelligence workshops, I say, think of somebody you consider to be quite emotionally intelligent, and then they write for 5 minutes about that person, just to make conscious, what is it that makes me think they're, you know, in this case, more balanced in their anima and animus. So that might be another exercise to consider. And yeah, and it's worth, you know, I guess like anything in my mind, it's worth Googling. It's worth looking at the Wikipedia pages. It's worth listening to our favorite podcast, This Jungian Life, because they do have some episodes on this topic. And if you go to their Spotify page or their website, you can look at all of the episodes, including the one on anima and animus. There's a good one on gender dysphoria. Somebody mentions the non-binary sort of phenomenon in our culture. I can't remember exactly the comment, which I think is cool until it gets medicalized. But anyway, if you're interested in that topic, you can listen to the episode on gender dysphoria. There's a few episodes on masculine and feminine. So just keep exploring, Stephanie. Just keep wondering, keep reflecting. And if you want this, trust that it will manifest. That's the direction of your life, that your life is going in.
There's been quite a few comments since I last checked in. I'll read from the bottom up because it's easy for backtracking. Glenn's asking, where's a good place for yoga? Most suburbs will have a local place. I'm a big fan of local. Because you'll get a dose of community, which is an aspect of yoga. If you're anywhere in the Graceful area, or if you're interested to do it online, I'm your woman. I only do one-on-one, but we do retreats. We have a retreat coming up in November, so keep your eyes and ears tuned for that. And what should you be looking for in a good yoga practitioner, a good yoga teacher? That's a really great question too. I think you'd want to have a sense that they've really done the work, because a lot of yoga, just like all the healing arts, is passed down from teacher to student, you know, so a lot of it is by transmission. So I'd be really trusting your instinct on that, but getting clear about why you're going to start yoga or to pick it up again, and what qualities you're looking to cultivate, and then finding those would be the simplest. Stephanie says, if you have one side stronger than the other, how do I equal out the two? We've answered that. And this said, thank you for your comment about being a friend to yourself. It's so important. Okay, then I think we have covered a lot of it. Oh yes, Amir, a lot of unlearning. It's a good word. There's a lot of unlearning to be done for us to move into a new space. Is there anything you would like to add to close off, Rachel? I think I've covered everything I was hoping to cover today.
No, I like this. For me, is such a new topic that it's just opened my mind, and I'll go away and do some more reflection and reading. And thank you for bringing it.
My pleasure. So much fun. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone next week. I think that's about it for now. And we'll be back at 5, live at 5 next Sunday.
5 o'clock next Sunday.
Okay. Thank you again, Rachel. Always lots of fun.
Yes, likewise. Thanks, Alexis. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining. Bye.